Hi everyone, it's me, Tim, and today I want to talk about fixing design problems. These are not bugs. I'm not talking about the game is, nearing completion and there are things that aren't working right. I'm talking about you make a design, you give it to your programmers, and they're like, we gotcha. And they implement it, and the artists all go, here's your good stuff, put it in, here's everything you asked for, and it's all in and working exactly the way you asked, but there's a problem. Now I'm going to use an example from the original Fallout game, a design problem that it shipped with. So I can use that as an example as we're going through. So in the original Fallout, you could buy an energy weapon skill. In fact, you could tag it right at the beginning of the game if you wanted to. The only problem is energy weapons aren't available for at least the first half and closer to the first 2/3 of the game. So you have tagged or spent points in a skill that will be completely and utterly useless to you. So this is a problem because it may not be what was intended, but it's certainly what the design allows, and it is not a bug. Everything is working exactly the way the design document said. So I think there are 4 steps when you have to go through when you're fixing design problems. And step 1 is simply to notice that you have the problem, something we did not do in Fallout. So for a game like Fallout, the issue is you have so many different types of PCs, player characters, that when you do a playtest, you may not notice that issue, especially if you're playing a player character that doesn't even have that skill. Because you don't have that skill, you're not noticing that there aren't any energy weapons dropping in the game. QA might not notice the problem either. Not just because of the characters they're making, but they may make a character that has the energy weapon skill, but they don't think this is a problem. It seems to be what's planned, that energy weapons come late. So they may or may not report it. They may think it's what's intended. For both of those reasons, that you may be playing a character that isn't affected by it, or you may be playing a character that is, and you think it's supposed to be that way. This is another reason why I like telemetry or logging or whatever you want to do in your game to record game sessions, so that you can collect these sessions and then run a report and go, hey, what's the show me when energy weapons tend to show up and where they come from. And then you notice they're all shoved to the end of the game. And you're like, that's a problem. So now that you have noticed that problem exists, the first thing you want to do, or the second step, is confirm that the problem is really a problem. This may sound obvious, but a lot of people don't take this step, where you think you've noticed a problem, but now you actually want to make sure if it's really a problem. In this case, with the energy weapons, you want to make sure this is an issue of the energy weapons literally not being available versus this just being randomness and a low sample size. I've talked in earlier videos about nobody understands randomness, so maybe there is a vendor who randomly has an energy weapon, and they've just never had it on your playthrough. I've had this happen to me where people say, hey, I've played the game 5 times and that vendor never had an energy weapon. And if you look and go, well, there's a 1 in 3 chance there's an energy weapon at that vendor. Well, guess what? 1 in 3 to the 5th power is only something like 1 in 300 or something. It might even be less than that. The point here is you could play the game 300 times and notice in one of those playthroughs that that vendor never ever has it. So it's not that rare of an event. So you'd have to go back and look in your look in the game to see if that's actually something that just can happen randomly or it's really happening. And again, this is why telemetry helps, because it doesn't look at 1 playthrough or 10 playthroughs. It looks at thousands of playthroughs. And I wish we had this, because even though we had QA playing our game all day, every day, Fallout was a 40-hour game to get through the main story arc and some of the side quests. So what tended to happen was we delivered a new build to them once a week, And everyone in QA could play through with a player character once on that build. If you wanted to play from start to finish, it took you 40 hours to do it, which is a full week. So what happens when you're confirming the problem is you go look at the design docs. Is the lack of an energy weapon dropping anywhere, is this expected? Does it appear in any vendor list? Does it appear in any loot list of creatures that can show up earlier in the game? Now, you can look at the design docs to see if that was actually written down as a goal. Remember I told you to put goals in your design docs? Maybe there's a goal here saying we want all skills to be available, even ones that won't be usable yet. So maybe that's something someone wanted. We didn't use goals in the Fallout design docs, so that's a problem right there. I can see people arguing, well, people can always just buy the energy weapon skill later. Sure, they can, but letting them buy it early is just completely wasting points, and it's misleading to them. It's saying, here's a skill you can use, oh, but you're never going to be able to use it. That'd be like not putting any locks into the last map of the game and saying, well, I know you tagged pick locking, or lockpicking, but too bad, you're not going to use it till the end of the game. So let's bring this to the third step, which is now fixing the problem. And you may think, well, that's really obvious. Just put some energy weapons in the game early. You can. The big question there is, where will you put them? Because depending on where you put them, they might still be missed by most people on a common playthrough. If the only energy weapon is, in a character's inventory that you're unlikely to kill or pickpocket, or if it has a low chance of dropping in a vendor table or a low chance of dropping off some creature, or maybe it's a creature people tend not to encounter, or when they do, they don't kill it, you may still have energy weapons not appearing early enough in the game to make that skill worthwhile. Also, if you put a lot of them in, they're probably going to have to be weak or low level energy weapons, which again may make people go, well, why did I spend points to have these sad weapons? So another problem, or another solution, which is not as obvious, is change your system design. This is something that you can do pretty easily by just saying, hey, the energy weapon skill is locked until the player's a certain level or some other prerequisite is met. You can do skill specialization and say energy weapon is a specialization of the weapon skill, and you have to put so many points into the weapon skill before you can specialize it into energy weapons. Then it's something there for the player to build towards, but he's putting points in the base weapon skill, which lets him use the weapons that are already in the game. And by the time he has enough points in that and he's specializing the energy weapons, that's when the energy weapons will tend to drop in the game. That is exactly what we did in the Outer Worlds. We put specialization skills under base skills. So in the Outer Worlds, you had to spend points in the ranged combat skill until it hits 50, and then you can start specializing. I believe it was like single-handed guns, long guns, and heavy weapons. So it didn't matter that heavy weapons were a little more rare than the other two. People weren't spending points in that skill. They were basically spending just points in generic ranged combat until they got high enough to specialize it. And that's one way of fixing your design problem without having to change loot tables or re-itemize the world. You basically do it in the skill system itself. And then now that leads us to the very important fourth step that sometimes people forget, which is test the solution you just put in. I've already pointed out ways you could have fixed the energy weapon skill, by potentially dropping it early in ways that would fail. Either it still has a good chance of not showing up, or the things that drop are so weak and bad that nobody really considers this a solution. So what you should always do is after you've made these changes, you have to go back in and test them. Even better, make a test plan for QA and have them, when they test it, know that this is a problem, and here's a test plan of what you want them to go do. Like, make a note of when you find energy weapons, or when you get the energy weapon skill. Is the energy weapon skill useful, and are you using it? Those kind of things for them to test. And then, while you're doing this, while you're involved in the energy weapon skill and doing stuff like that, look at the other skills that are on the player list and see, do any of these have an issue? For example, lockpicking. Are there enough locks to pick? Disarming traps. Are there enough traps out there? All the different subtypes types of melee weapons, are they in the game? Are they dropping correctly? Are there chances for the player to use first aid and doctor frequently? Do these conditions get applied frequently enough that they want to use them? Are there items that fix these things so no player would ever want to take those skills? These are things you should look at, because while none of these are bugs per se, they're problems in the design. And this is what I've always told designers, is that you can write a perfect design document and it can get implemented exactly the way you intended by the programmers. And all the assets can be made beautifully and wonderfully and work perfectly by all your artists. And you still get it in the game and you're like, this isn't really what I want. Or it's what I asked for, but it's not what we should have. Those are the kind of design problems you need to fix. And this is the 4-step method to fixing them, which is notice it, confirm it, fix it, and test it. So I hope this was a good summary of fixing design problems in computer games.